Hello, making a third video. This is not a phase, Mom. Um, Happy March Madness. Go green. I realize everything in this video is green. I didn't go to state, but I like them. For now, they're still in the tournament. I always start these videos with a disclaimer, so here's another disclaimer. I grew up Christian. I am Christian, believe it or not. Some of these questions and topics are complicated and we have to wrestle with them. My worry and kind of my motivation for making these videos is that someone who's curious about said topics would ask questions genuinely, and a Christian would come along and give them the short, simple, easy answer confidently, as if it's not, complicated or hard to grasp. And this would make the curious person say to themselves, like, wow, it doesn't seem that simple and it doesn't really sit right with me, so maybe I can't be part of your cool group. So I guess I want to be an example of someone who has a relationship with God but is learning through these topics, similar to how someone would who doesn't know who Jesus is. Saying that, I wrote down a big topic today, wrote down some notes. The question I wrote down is, why do bad things happen to good people? Womp womp. So first off, talking about good and bad people, I have a big pet peeve with this. I hate labeling people as good people or bad people, personally. I think that we love like public personalities, celebrities, athletes, politicians, and think that they're like so good because they're on TV when they're just people just like you and me. And then when they do something bad, they're like awful people. I think they're just people. Like Taylor Swift will like donate money and say nice words, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, she's the best person ever. She's a good person. And then they'll say, oh, I didn't know she flies a private jet and it's bad for the environment. She's an evil person. I had no idea, but turns out she's a really bad person. I think everyone is capable of good and bad. When someone does something super evil, I think it's just hard to forgive them. It's a lot easier to just throw them in a category of bad person. They're kind of dead to me. I'm done with them or whatever. Which, okay, that'll be my first question. Question one is simple. Are there good and bad people? And what does that mean? Now, this brings me to the Christian idea that I'm sure most are aware of, and that is that everyone is bad, in the sense that we all fall short of God's glory. So it's not a question of if you're a good or bad person, but rather, have you accepted Jesus? Are you saved? Yes or no? So technically, in a Christian view, there could be a murderer, rapist, thief who repents, changes his way, and believes Jesus is the Son of God. There could also be a very kind person who hasn't done any of those bad things, but doesn't believe Jesus is God. Now, if this murderer genuinely is a believer and changes his ways, his sin would be atoned for in God's eyes. Now he can have that relationship with God. But the kind and mild-mannered person would still have a barrier separating them from God, eternity, paradise, whatever you want to call it. So, question two, which I'm sure a lot of people would have a problem with, especially that didn't grow up in church, does this idea of being saved, rather than the merit of good or bad person, conflict with the idea that God is perfectly just and that he gives true justice? Yeah. So that all has to do with a good or bad person. The latter half of the question, why do bad things happen to good people? Now, for the bad things part of that, same subject, slightly different topic. how do we view these bad things that happen to people? So, from what I've heard from church, the Bible, whatever, God often will reassure his people in the Bible that he has a plan. He has plans for us to prosper. He's a good God. He wants what's best for us. And that obviously, just because we don't live in a perfect world, we're going to get hit with crap. And then that seems to conflict with everything being good for us, you know? So I've seen Christian leaders, priests, pastors fall into two camps, and maybe they bleed into each other, but I've heard both things. The first camp would believe that everything happens for a reason. Each and every event is part of a greater plan. So to say something kind of extreme, your daughter, who died tragically of cancer, was part of God's good plan, and there was a specific reason for it that we just can't see right now, but we will later. I would say that most pastors believe this to a certain degree. It definitely seems to reassure people that the tragedy wasn't for nothing and that something good will come of it. And it just kind of reassures us that God is always in control. The second camp, which is maybe a little bit less mainstream, I've also heard Christian leaders and thinkers say, simply, it's awful and we may never know why something like that happened. Maybe there isn't a specific reason that happened. Maybe we all have free will. We can sin and hurt others. And sadly, some people get hurt by people, by nature, by whatever. I mean, all the more reason to put faith in Jesus because the world is broken and unpredictable. This second option doesn't really carry the burden of having to explain why a child dies, but it's also pretty pessimistic, and it makes a God sound kind of laissez-faire, kind of hands-off, like he's less involved, maybe. Which leads to my third final question. Is there a specific reason for every bad thing that happens? Or is the evil just a side effect of being in a broken world with broken people? I've had a lot of people reach out, DM, text, call me, and comment about these videos, and it's been very cool for me to talk to people about this because I care about this a lot. So please keep doing that. Please comment below if you want to roast me, or I guess better if you have any answers or thoughts on these questions at all, maybe Bible verses or something that stick out to you. So just thank you so much for watching the videos and thinking about it. That does mean a lot. So first question, are there good and bad people? What does that mean? Does the idea of being saved and just believing in Jesus compared to doing good and bad, does that conflict with God's justice? And then the third question would be, is there a reason for every little thing that happens, good or bad? Or is some of it just up to chance in a broken world? Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Go green. Watch basketball, I guess. And have a good weekend. Thank you.